In a world overrun by neocon warmongers, and with the mass media in the pockets of the cabal elite, there remains one bastion of truth amidst the confusion. One beacon of light shining through the murky fog of spin and Islamophobic propaganda. That's right, it's the MP Radio Security Council. The final frontier in the fight for freedom and fairness. I give you the Security Council.
أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد عن خطى الإيمان. دربنا درب قويم دربنا درب قويم بالهدى القرآني. أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد عن خطى الإيمان. دربنا درب قويم دربنا درب قويم بالهدى القرآني. سائر في طريق الحق يا جند الله.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. You're listening to Middle Path Radio, and this is the Security Council. I'm your brother Ahmed, and with me in the studio are, of course, Mr. Producer, and we have, of course, Brother Khabbab as well tonight. Assalamu alaikum to everybody.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum to all the listeners.
Wa alaikum salam. Just as we get started tonight, I want to give out the number straight away before I forget, as I always do. It's 07477 080 248. That's 07477 080 248. So brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, joining us from wherever you are and whoever you are, do contact us on our text number, as well as you can feel comfortable to give us a call as well. We're going to be discussing three main issues tonight. I've asked Brother Khabbab to really speak about one particular issue with us today, but the three different agendas that we're going for are: number one, the topic of, or the question of, voting in general elections, to vote or not to vote. That's the question. The other two agendas that we're going for are, well, we actually plan to only have two agendas tonight. The other one being Mayor Lutfur Rahman and him being removed from his office. Okay, some of you may have heard about him, especially if you live in London. You will have heard about him. Possibly even outside London, you'd have heard about him. A lot has been made of the mayoralty of Mayor Lutfur Rahman. Is it fair to call him mayor anymore since they've removed him? He's no longer the mayor, as far as we know. So there's a somber mood in the community, not just inside the borough of Tower Hamlets, where he is mayor, but we'll be talking more about that as soon as we arrive on the agenda. The final agenda, which was something that we didn't plan into our schedule today, really is the, I don't like calling it riots in America right now. You see,
Protests.
The protests. That's correct. That's a better word. So the protests that are taking place in America.
Civil disobedience is called, yes?
Yes, and the civil unrest. Maybe you can describe it as that. But yes, a lot of people are calling them riots as well, because of course there is some property damage and things like that going on. But is that the issue? Is that why we're hearing about it? Have people asked why this is happening in the first place? Is this a reaction, or is this the provocation? So we'll be looking at some of these three subjects tonight. So we welcome anyone to join in with the discussion tonight. The number again is 07477 080 248. That's 07477 080 248. Don't forget to tweet at us on our Middle Path Radio Twitter account. That's at Middle Path Radio. Okay, that's again one word, at Middle Path Radio. We regularly do our Django of the week. So that's hashtag Django of the week with a J, starting with a J, not a D. Okay, so that's Django of the week. And Django of the week, for those of you who are uninitiated with the Security Council, the Django of the week simply is a hall of shame where we enter, we take a quick little consultation and we decide on who is the disgrace for the human race. Sorry, what did you say, Brother Khabbab?
We pass the resolution of...
We pass a resolution on who is the Django of this week. So we take suggestions from yourselves, especially on that hashtag on our Twitter feed. Okay, that's hashtag Django of the week. If you've got any recommendations, people we've missed out, maybe even people that we may not even touch on today. Normally we don't have enough time, and there may be honourable mentions. Some idiot out there deserves Django of the week. So if you think you've got a good recommendation for who Django of the week should be, use the hashtag, please, and put forward the name. Hashtag Django of the week.
Or if you are a Django yourself and you want to nominate yourself, by all means, just drop us a line.
Much in line with Django of the week tradition. So what we're going to be doing is trying to squeeze in these three subjects in a space of less than an hour, because we try our best to, literally push out as much content as we can, and discussion and debate, discourse and dialogue in this space of this 1 hour. And the first part of the program goes straight away with the introduction. It's kind of hard to do justice, and really we have to apologize in advance to all our listeners that we won't be able to get everything crammed in the space of this 1 hour. We'll do our best. So do contribute with your text messages, call in and speak to us and our panel about the different issues. Again, a reminder being, we're going to be talking about the very question, whether to vote or not to vote in the general elections in the UK. Okay, if you are going to be voting, please suggest as to why you think it is important to vote, who it is that you will be voting for. Not that Middle Path Radio campaigns or advocates for any particular political party. The National Front. Okay. So, give us a call if you're going to be of the view that you don't vote, you shouldn't vote. You may think it is not correct to vote. You may even go as far as to say that it is haram or kufr to vote. And so give us a call or send us a text message on 07 477 080 248. That's 07 477 080 248. The reason why we're encouraging this on Middle Path Radio is that we know in the community there is a spectrum of different views and different positions. I'm not suggesting that you have to be a scholar, nor am I making it a condition in order for you to have a view on this. I don't think that's the way a Muslim operates. You can default to a position of a scholar, or if you have certain strong evidences that you can refer to, and an Islamic position that you can refer all of our listeners to, then you may hold that view. So give us a call and speak your mind, speak freely, as long as you're not attacking or insulting or offending a specific personality or an individual. Let's speak about the issues at hand.
Unless it's Nigel Farage.
Unless it's Farage. We make certain exceptions for exceptional people. So unless it's Farage. So if you've got these views, we want you to feel free to speak to us. At the moment, I haven't come across, over the years, I'd say over the last decade or so, since this buzz around voting, in inverted commas, in the general elections.
Voting from the Muslim community.
Yeah, in the Muslim community, that's right. I've not had, nor have I seen, a platform where ordinary voters who are being asked to go and vote are able to express their views and their feelings. And there hasn't been a let's say, a free space for the question to vote or not to vote to be heavily scrutinized or even challenged. And I think Middle Path Radio is doing that job today, where we're giving everybody the opportunity to chime in and have their say right now. And whatever your view, that is your view. We're not going to be censoring your view. You come on air and tell us what you think. So if you think voting's a great thing, it's an important part of British society, Muslims have a duty or a role to play in affecting policy in the UK, for example. Whatever your arguments may be, give us a call. If you disagree with that, if you think it's actually theologically incorrect, wrong, impermissible to do so, to vote, then call us on 07 477 080 248. That's 07 477 080 248. That's the question: to vote or not to vote. While we get some of those texts and calls coming in, or many of those may well be tweets, okay, so don't forget to tweet us at Middle Path Radio. I'm going to ask Brother Khabbab to just give us a quick, let's just say, a conclusion on what's happened. What's the latest? Let's work backwards from the latest developments with the Mayor Lutfur Rahman case.
Well, I think you mentioned before that those within Tahamlets will be fully aware. I think actually those Muslims who are politically active or politically aware would also be aware, because, as always, it could be in any little tiny village somewhere in the UK, but as long as there's a Muslim involved, it will be national news, and obviously this was national news.
That's right.
In terms of Lutfur Rahman, obviously, he got in, elections took place last year, and since then you had 4 people got together as petitioners to kind of take the case to the High Court in order to, under the Representation of People's Act.
Yes.
1980 something, 7, I think it was. To kind of overturn, and they put many different cases forward as to the issues relating to him. Now, obviously, this case has gone on for the whole month of February.
Yep.
February, and then went to March as well, and then obviously it's been a bit of a break while the judge kind of got all the things together. Maori, the judges, and since then he obviously last week he came out with his verdict, and just to summarize it all, there are 4 key areas for which he was which was a justification for him to be removed immediately from office.
That's right.
Those 4 I'll just quickly run down. First and foremost is that they'd referred to the ballot papers. Some of them they felt were faked, or it was kind of incorrect. Somebody else had actually voted, and these tended to be the postal votes. Now, just to make the point here that all of those little questionable votes, they only amounted to about 100 votes.
That's right.
There's only about 100 votes that were questionable out of the 37,000 people that voted. The second point being of spiritual influence. This is something that was cited back in the 19th century. That was used once against the Irish, I believe.
Yeah.
The use of spiritual influence. But here they were trying to say how a list of 101 imams who signed a letter, and it was published in a Bangla newspaper, saying it is their duty to vote for Lutfur Rahman. And somehow this is also corruption, and somehow it actually, forced people to vote for Lutfur Rahman as if the Muslim community doesn't have a mind of their own. Thirdly was in relation to him calling his opponent, which was John Biggs, or kind of calling him a racist.
So he was guilty of calling somebody a racist?
Effectively, yes. And we'll come to the double standards.
That's
of all
quite
of
a
this.
dangerous precedent.
Really, they're the 3 main issues that cause... I did mention 4, sorry, there's actually 3 main issues that...
One was a spiritual influence.
Spiritual influence.
One was calling Biggs a racist.
Biggs was racist. And the other one was about 100 ballot papers, which, again, they can't prove it was him.
100 ballot papers. Out of how many?
Out of thousands. Obviously, 37,000 voted for him. I don't know how many other 1,000, again, voted altogether. But it was the highest turnout in terms of... From nationally, anyway.
That's right.
A big high turnout. So these were the main issues. The other ones were kind of chucked away. They didn't really look at it in terms of the financial, kind of issues and all of those kind of things.
On that issue of the 100 ballot papers, on the night of the count, when the actual elections took place, there had to be recounts and so on based on some similar spurious allegations. And a recount still concluded that
basically Lutfur Rahman had a large margin, a good few thousand.
Yeah.
So 100 here, or even 200, or let's make it 500. It wouldn't make no difference to the outcome of the election.
That's right.
It doesn't mean that the 37,000 people that voted for him are all of their votes void. And obviously, at the same time, Lutfur Rahman was then expelled from office for 5 years, as of immediately.
Wow.
And he's what's this called now? I forgot the term now. His agent, that's it. He's referred to agent. So one of the councillors was an agent, which was Ali Chowdhury. He was also a councillor in the Stepney ward. He also is banned and public office and for 5 years.
He's also been fined, not Ali Chowdhury, but
not fined, meaning that the cost of the case is about £250,000, and that's something he has to pay.
It's been
basically put to him. So now, obviously, this has come as a big shock because even in the courtroom, even everybody who is there, even the journalists, they did not expect this outcome. That's what they were saying. There was gasps literally in the courtroom when everything was being read out. And this just looks like a big stitch up as far as I'm concerned.
Definitely.
In all honesty, there was, no evidence of fraud because the police came in straight after the elections. They investigated everything. PwC came in, and all of them said there was no evidence of fraud. They mentioned the point, which is that a lot more funds were allocated to Bangladeshis, but that doesn't prove anything in terms of fraud or fraudulent behavior in any way. So really, it seems so strange how this kind of goes against democracy, that he is elected and yet some unelected judge kind of overturns it all. And on top of that, he was making a mockery of Lutfur Rahman, trying to say how he used, the race card, how he used Islamophobia to win votes, and there's no such thing as actually, there is no racism because in Tower Hamlets, the Bangladeshis are not a minority.
Yeah, on your point about democracy, some, listeners, some people out in the community may misunderstand, and we want to clarify that we're actually exposing the double standard in the system itself, and those people that believe in democracy and believe in the promise of democracy, that democracy can deliver and actually that democracy works. We're questioning that, and we are showing people that in this case, here's an example where democracy clearly doesn't work, and it's one example of many examples. This is actually overlapping into our second agenda, which I don't really want to do right now because we're still covering Mayor Lutfur Rahman on this. But this is not the first time that the Muslim community have been shown that democracy doesn't work for Muslims. Democracy doesn't apply to Muslims. So,
but this whole thing literally has the hallmarks. So you're talking about from government top all the way down. In order to they've looked at Tower Hamlets. This is the mayor again who they did not expect to win the election again. They thought, that's it. They got their guy up there. You have to remember this. Going back to the 2010 elections, within the Labour Party, John Biggs wanted to be the candidate for Labour for mayor. But what happened was Lutfur Rahman then got more votes from the Labour Party members, and so therefore he became the candidate. So then one of his other rivals, Halal Abbas, managed to another dodgy dossier, a bit like the Iraq one, brought that up, and then that basically got him kicked out from the Labour Party, and he stood independent and he still beat them. And then John Biggs now has finally got his chance, and they all expect him to win, and boom, he's lost again. So how could this possibly be? And then all the allegation of Panorama and all of the other things that came about. So at least from the government, they've sent in, Eric Pickles come down, sending his investigators, and
Mayor Lutfur Rahman, he used to be with the Labour Party.
Yes,
wasn't that correct? So and he was removed from the Labour Party by, of course, the party management, or the people that obviously understood that Mayor Lutfur Rahman, even though he's part of the Labour Party, actually represented real people and actually was fighting and serving the people that were voting for him. They weren't comfortable with Mayor Lutfur Rahman being there, so he'd been removed from the candidacy. But on the point about allegations of racism against Mr. Biggs, or not just Biggs, they said that, Mr. Rahman, one of the problems with Mr. Rahman is that whoever criticizes him, he keeps saying that they're racists. But what kind of why would Mayor Lutfur Rahman, what's his grounds for making those kinds of allegations?
A lot of things are clear. If you look at just generally if you just look at the individual himself, he's part of the Labour Party. He won the votes in their democratic process of within the Labour Party, and he became selected as the candidate for Labour for mayor. And then afterwards, look at attack upon attack that's come upon him. Then, he then was a dodgy dossier was made up of him, which was then afterwards found it to be completely untrue, and Labour did clear his name, but they didn't obviously bring him back within the Labour fold. He was then stood as independent. He then won against, the system, you could say.
Yeah. He stood on his own.
Exactly.
And he still won.
And he beat them. And then, again,
so that was kind of like, really a slap on Labour Party's face.
Of course. And then on top of that, he's had numerous. He had the dispatches just before his election. Then this election comes around. Then a panorama comes just before the election.
So BBC's spending a lot of taxpayer money.
And then just before the election, Eric Pickles says, "I'm going to send down, people into the what do you call it? into the council
to the mayor's
inspect,
office,
and then they go through everything, literally bit by bit, forensic examination. And after all of that, he then concludes that he's going to send in commissioners that are going to sit in the council, and then the elections happen, and then these cases are brought against him, and just continue smear and attack on this individual. And it's just amazing how, you have to look at this, out of all of the directly elected mayors in the UK, he is the only non-white, that's the key point here, mayor. And at the same time, it happens to be that he's a Muslim. So, lo and behold, you've got probably the best kind of pin-up guy for all the racists out there and Islamophobes, because he's 2 in 1. He's Bengali and he's racist. I mean, he's a Muslim. So therefore,
that's a very strong case explanation, actually, as to why Mayor Lutfur Rahman and his team have been saying that the allegations against him and the onslaught that he's having to face on a regular basis, the uphill struggle that he's been involved in, had a racist slant to it. That's one very important.
They kept on obviously attacking.
There was another one where one of the allegations against him was that he was actually serving the Bengali community, and that his team, on top of that, his team is made up of mostly Bengali people.
His whole cabinet is Bengali. But then again, hang on a minute. Why don't we look at some of the other mayors and their cabinets? They're all white. Are they only serving the white community? Yeah. What's the big issue if they're all Bengali?
So that kind of question, and being concerned about the fact that his cabinet's made up of only Bengali people, that itself is legitimately racist. When I say Mayor Lutfur Rahman raises that as a racist accusation, that's a legitimate allegation to put to Mr. Biggs and anybody else who's made those kinds of arguments.
It makes the point that because they're Bengali, they will only serve Bengalis.
Yeah.
So by default, you are saying that people who are of ethnic minorities only serve ethnic minorities, whereas a white man, he serves everybody.
Yeah. So it's the detractors of Mayor Lutfur Rahman that have made it actually a race issue. It is not Mayor Lutfur Rahman and his team that have made it a race issue. And despite all of the things that you've just described there, Brother Khabbab, as to the difficulties he's had since he's come into office, since he was in Labour, with the Labour Party, considering all of these, tremendous obstacles in his way, he's still managed to deliver on many counts.
Most progressive policies that he has. He's managed to literally, as they tend to try and say, is kind of take on the establishment. Where they were putting in bedroom tax, he managed to protect those who are the most vulnerable. Where they were cutting in many services, he managed to still continue.
For example, free school dinners,
free school meals. He brought back in the education maintenance allowance. He then even students. Provided free, care for the elderly. All of these things were coming in, and then all of these cuts were coming.
More back. Social housing, affordable housing.
He froze the
than
council
any
tax.
Borough in the
Exactly,
country.
They won the award for making the most. Homes. It's just, again, and then on top of that, if you want to be very neutral, if you look at him, you're talking about he only serves the Bengali community, he even stood up for many other communities.
Yeah, for example, this is, to make the point that he's not serving only the Bengali community. That itself was a racist allegation against him, and he's come out to say, and his team have come out to say, this is an allegation that was found in BBC's Panorama. Same thing happened with the dispatches, that he's only serving the Muslim community, that he was only funding maybe Somalian charities. By the way, Mayor Lutfur Rahman is not a Somali. Okay, so the racists can't seem to make their mind up. On one hand, he's serving only the Bengali community, and then in the same breath, he's actually only serving the Muslim community, the Somalis, and so on and so forth. So, he's come out to say, no, actually, that's not true. He approved a very large grant for a synagogue, if we understand. And now, this is like, this flies in the face of these allegations, because they've made allegations that he's an Islamist, he's representing some hardcore extreme Islamic groups, and so on and so forth. Yet here he is giving grants of large sums to synagogues. He's approved gay pride marches, to the distaste of many Muslims in this community, a Muslim community that actually is, I think, 35% of this borough, which is the highest population of Muslims in any local authority in the country, according to Tower Hamlets' own website, right? So in that community, he's faced probably some of these criticism that, you're obviously not an Islamist. So there's not been a huge furore. People knew him not to be an Islamist. They knew him to be just an ordinary politician. And even this hardline, or it's not fair to call them hardline, even, let's say ourselves, we're Orthodox Muslims, we believe in our religion, we stand by our principles, yet we found Lutfur Rahman, despite all of these things that he's doing that wouldn't be, let's say going to a mosque, a synagogue wearing the skull cap is not approved of in the religion of Islam. Yet he served everybody in the community. There's no denying that he hasn't served the Muslim community. He's definitely done that. Lutfur Rahman hasn't denied that. But what he has denied, and what the Muslim community are clearly seeing, is that he hasn't just served the Muslim community, he has served everyone, including gays and Jews, who are supposed to be beyond the pale in the Muslim community. So these allegations from these Islamophobes and these racists in the establishment, whether it be government, whether it be the media, okay, these are completely unfounded. And he was on this program, by the way, saying that he had done a lot of work and approved grants and funding for the Salvation Army, which is a Christian organization. He referred to also the homeless people's accommodation, such as the Booth House on Whitechapel Road. He referred to many instances where he had done work with non-Muslim, non-Bengali organizations. So these kinds of allegations were completely unfounded. And it's just so sad, Brother Khabbab, to see that the British media, the British government, and the British, nation in general, getting involved in this kind of Islamophobic witch hunt against one man. It's just an utter shame.
But it's not really him. The point is, it's what he stands for, or the fear that they have and unfortunately, it's an ethnic minority, or it's a Muslim who holds power. He holds a £1 billion budget. He's got thousands and thousands of people who support him. They're afraid of this kind of, political engagement of Muslims. Yet on one hand, they say, oh, you need to get politically engaged. And when you start doing, hang on a minute, no. If you get into power, that's not allowed. You can just be maybe the guys going out, handing out the leaflets and door knocking. That's about it. Don't go beyond that. And there's from top down, he's being made an example of. Yeah. And it's not just the fact that he's been stripped of office. He's also been told by the judge that they're going to refer him to the, I think it's called the SRA, the kind of regulatory body that regulates for solicitors, for him to be struck off from even being a solicitor, which is his profession. That's his profession. So therefore, if he's not in politics now, okay, maybe he'll go back now into his law for the next 5 years or so. He can't even do that. So
what has that got anything to do with his mayoralty?
It's a complete example, which is you now stand up to the establishment and even the policies. He stood up to the Conservatives' harsh policies, and he protected the residents of Tower Hamlets. And because of that,
from those cuts and from those harsh times, the people here,
and from all of that, exactly, and because of all of that, he's now been made an example of that. You stand up to the establishment, you go against us, we'll show you, we'll destroy your life, and you won't even have a career. And guess what? You'll probably end up signing on to the benefits, which you won't be eligible for, because we're going to cut that as well.
That's right. So, I just want to quickly read out some text here. It says, Salam, this looks like another Egypt taking place, says Brother Amin from Birmingham. Obviously, I get the point. Obviously, it's on a much more of a local scale here compared to Egypt. But the same thing is happening in the sense that I think he's actually sent this text in when we were making the comment that democracy, for those who believe in it, should know that it doesn't work, nor does it apply to Muslims.
It's a coup. Yeah, it's a coup in
the whole thing's a farce, because clearly here, just like with the Egyptian elections, when the people come out to vote in their huge numbers and vote for a candidate, whether he be Muslim or not, or whether he be Islamic or not, if it doesn't fit the government agenda, if it doesn't toe the establishment line, then it will be done away with. And that's exactly what has happened in Egypt and what's happened here. And it's not only there. We look at Algeria, the exact same thing happened. We look at Gaza, the exact same thing happened there. So regardless of believing in the promise of democracy, the facts speak for themselves that if you do vote and the Muslim community start to get politically active and start to express themselves politically, your say and your voice won't count and won't be heard.
Basically, it's one of those things where they say, oh, we need to go and spread democracy around the world, they're afraid of dictators, and then when certain things when the dictators fall and then the people come out and actually choose, and they choose Islam or they choose Islamic model,
party, yeah.
Then hang on a minute, just like Tony Blair says, actually these countries, they need a dictator. Unfortunately, they need a strong figure to hold
the
them.
Arab world isn't ready.
They're not ready for
democracy. What a racist thing to say.
They're not ready for democracy because they don't know what the right choice is. They're choosing. This isn't right. We give them a choice,
and
they make the wrong choice. It's the wrong choice. You have to be our choice or no choice.
So much for democracy, eh?
Yeah.
So we've got other texts here, and I want to make more comment on that while we're still touching on the wider issue of democracy failing the Muslim world, and those that believed that it would ever actually deliver in the first place. I make no bones about the fact that I'm actually never been a believer in democracy. I've always exposed the hypocrisy and the lies of democracy.
Believer.
Never been a great believer of democracy. But anyway, another text has come in saying, Salam, do they not want Muslim people to vote? They spend so much effort and money to get people to come out and vote, and this happens? Democracy at its finest, says this texter anonymously.
And just on that part here, I just got to talk about spiritual influence. You got to say he's referring to imams. So I got to mention this point. Imams have gone out and said vote for Lutfur Rahman, so on, all of those points. And then
one imam we've heard of. One imam.
No, they said 101 imams.
Oh wow!
Signed a letter. Yeah.
Okay.
So now in the same week that these come out, you've got pictures of David Cameron dressed up as a Sikh man. In his Sikh temple,
in a Sikh turban.
Look, what's he doing? I wonder what he's doing there. Maybe seeking some sort of spiritual influence.
Suddenly taking an interest in Sikhism, bro.
Then you got Bojo, who's in some mosque up in some other Camden or somewhere.
Yeah,
wearing a very funky hat. Appealing to the Muslims,
delivering a Friday sermon
to
the Muslim audience,
radicalizing them.
Another new hate preacher.
Yeah,
in the
new
mosques.
hate preacher, indeed.
Boris Johnson.
And
wonder what he's doing there.
So what's all this? Why are they then going to religious institutions and places of worship to then get votes? And now it's such a big deal if Lutfur Rahman done the same thing.
So Lutfur Rahman can't go to mosques and get their support.
Basically, if a Muslim does it, you can't do it. But if a white man does it, it's perfectly fine.
It's perfectly fine. It's how we exploited you people back in the days. We got your people to support us during the colonial era. We got brown-coloured men and leaders and women to come and show us, endorse our our system and our colonial power, but you guys can't do that. It's not allowed for you to do that. You're brown. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to do what we tell you to do. Okay, you're supposed to serve the white master, and that's literally a case of nothing's changed since those days. It's not been a very long time since those days anyway. But on the point of Muslims being told to vote, and this text coming in here highlighting that they spend so much effort and money to get people to come out and vote, and this is what happens. It's a sad indictment, to be honest with you, because, and I'm glad this has happened to an extent. I'm so glad that this has happened, not for Mayor Lutfur Rahman, but glad for the Muslim community at large to realize that this is what the Muslim community faces on an establishment, on a mainstream level. This is not the EDL that you're dealing with. This is not the National Front, and we're not talking about the 80s when there were neo-Nazis, skinheads, stomping down Brick Lane and Cable Street. We're not talking about those fringe. Well, we're led to believe that they're on the fringes of British society. We're talking about the mainstream. We are talking about the very establishment.
They are
here.
Just the out of closet guys.
Yeah,
the rest of them are just basically the doors are closed, but still
in the closet, yet to come out. So this is what the Muslim community actually have to deal with, and the Muslim community aren't the first ones to be facing this. The Afro-Caribbean community have been experiencing this for years and years, and that's why the Macpherson inquiry report branded the police service in the UK as being institutionally racist. And this is coming on to one of our other edges, and I don't want to really give away a lot about our topic later on the protests that have been taking place in America there. Okay? But you touched on this argument that has been made repeatedly in the entire Muslim world and also in the West, especially by Westerners, especially that by champions of democracy and so-called liberty and freedom. They've said that we need Muslims to lay down their arms, abandon violence, give up the extremism, in inverted commas I say that, give up the terrorism, again in inverted commas, and what they need to do is enter into the political process, much like what they said with the IRA not so long ago, actually.
And then they get scared by the
Muslim
Muslim Brotherhood and ban them.
And now when they've got a problem with the Muslim Brotherhood, who were always very much part of the political process, never had any armed kind of militia groups or anything operating in that sense, the way maybe the IRA did at one point. Okay. So I mean, then you had similar thing happening in Palestine, and we can see the reason why it's not even a fair comparison between Palestine, Egypt, and Tower Hamlets. The reason why it's not fair is not because of the fact that of the scale of the two different issues. The reason why it's not fair, in my mind, to make that comparison is the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas in Gaza and Egypt. They were declaredly an Islamic outfit. They weren't making any, let's say, they weren't trying to fool anybody otherwise. In Tower Hamlets, Mayor Lutfur Rahman does not even qualify as an Islamic leader or the representative of an Islamic party.
Nor did he ever say that as well.
Nor did he ever try and say that. The Muslim community do not consider him as such. That is 100% fact. Okay? He cannot be seen as an Islamic leader if he is approving gay pride marches. He cannot be, and he isn't, seen as the leader of the Islamic community in Tower Hamlets, or a representative or a spokesperson for them, because he, is involved in, say for example, things like going to the synagogue with a skull cap. But the Muslim community haven't attacked him for those things. They know him not to be a outwardly religious person. I think everybody knows he's a decent man. He probably does pray. He's very well mannered. These are all good characteristics of a Muslim. I know him personally. He's a really nice person. He's quite a gentleman. Okay, but that doesn't make him the leader of the Islamic community or the representative of the Islamic community. Yet, my point is, he is so unlike Hamas, so unlike the Muslim Brotherhood, so different from them. You'd think that, yes, the Muslim Brotherhood were deposed and they were, ousted because they were Islamists. And so with Hamas, they're hardline Islamists or, Muslim activists. Yeah, what about Mayor Lutfur Rahman of Tower Hamlets? He wasn't anything like them, and yet still he was removed from office. So even if you're a brown man, remotely Islamic or Muslim, he doesn't have a beard, he doesn't sport a cap, he doesn't wear a Arab dress, long flowing robe called a thobe. He doesn't do any of those things. Yet he was still ousted here in Tower Hamlets. So this shows that these are all lies. Or put away your give up your extremism, enter into the political process. When they say to the Muslim community, enter into the political process, they mean come into our political parties and serve us, as you used to serve us back in the days when we ruled Pakistan, India and Bangladesh. Go back to the old system. That's the only way you're going to have any role in the so-called political process. Unless you do that, you haven't got any other choice. And this leaves the young, disenfranchised Muslim population here, many of them whom happen to be, a large proportion of them are young Muslims. We have a huge young Muslim population in the UK. This leaves young people to think to themselves that, look, the political process is not for us. We can't win whichever way we turn. And unfortunately for some of these people, turning to more underground, clandestine methods of expressing themselves, sometimes involving violence, that becomes a more attractive proposition for these people. And until the establishment wake up to that fact, they are a direct contribution to young people turning to violence and other direct action means of expressing themselves. Alright, so I do put the blame directly onto those people in the establishment who are ousting out and witch hunting people like Mayor Lutfur Rahman, who himself is no Islamist by any stretch of the imagination. That's the real point I was trying to make. I wasn't trying to expose him or try and make a bad character of him. He's actually done a lot of good work in the community for all people of all walks of life. And I would like to just add, had those people who may make an issue of those things, like for example funding for preserving the Jewish synagogue, place of worship, from disrepair, if you're a Muslim leader in the Muslim world and you have a non-Muslim community that reside under your rule in the hypothetical world, right? The Muslim leader still has to serve the needs of those people, so long as it doesn't involve any kind of shirk and so on and so forth. It doesn't go against the Quran and Sunnah. So if they need safety, if they need a roof over their heads, for example, then it's to, especially if those non-Muslims in this country, for example, they are contributing, say from the Jewish community in this country, in this borough and this local authority, they have contributed their taxes. So that's their money that they're getting back to restore their place of worship. That's all that's happening here. I don't want to get people mixing and conflating different issues here. Okay, so Mayor Lutfur Rahman, I think we've talked a lot now, Brother Khabbab, about what's happened there. I think the whole thing is a disgrace. And I'm utterly shocked. It's good to see people coming out from different parts of the political arena. Former Mayor of London, Ken Livingstone, he's also come forward. For example, on the Tower Hamlets First, or Mayor Lutfur Rahman blog, if we look here, Mayor Lutfur Rahman today thanked a number of high-profile Labour figures and local community leaders who signed a letter of support for him to the Guardian newspaper on the 17th of April 2014. The letter was signed by Ken Livingstone, TUC President Mohammed Taj, Labour National Executive Committee member Christine Shawcroft, Steve Turner, Assistant General Secretary of Unite, as well as Operation Black Vote, Director Simon Woolley, and Leon Silva, President of the East London Central Synagogue. Oh my goodness, so even Jews are supporting Mayor Lutfur Rahman, it seems. So it was reposted on social media with messages of support from a number of senior Labour Party figures from across Britain. Among those retweeting it was Labour London Assembly member Murad Qureshi, who in 2010 wrote an article damning Rahman's expulsion from the party. Okay, so and it goes into details into the direct quotes of those people, these high-profile individuals in the local authority and in London in general, and their support for Mayor Lutfur Rahman. A couple of more texts on this before we were just about to move on. It says here, "I'm sorry, but this is such a stitch-up. The police found no wrongdoing during the election. Doings. The election commission found no wrong, yet one man with a wig overrides everyone." All right, so he's referring to the judge here that has overridden the voice and the decision of the majority of the people in the borough. This is what they claim to be democracy. So, this is exactly, the point that we've made earlier. A democratically elected leader has been overridden and removed by an unelected body. Another text reads here, "God forbid if a Jew cried anti-Semitic, God forbid a gay person cried homophobic, but no, a Muslim crying Islamophobic, he's a liar," says the text. So, very interesting. And that's why I said that is a dangerous precedent here to set when you are saying things like, one of the things that he's been found guilty of is falsely crying racist. That's a dangerous precedent, because this will terrify real victims, whom I believe Mayor Lutfur Rahman to be one of those, by the way, a real victim of racism. People will be afraid. Already, hate crime is underreported. Already victims of hate crime, Islamophobia, racism, do not have the courage, do not feel that they've got the support and the backing of, say, the police, the local authority, and other agencies around them. They don't have the faith and confidence that anyone will give them the support that they need, that anyone will hear them, because they feel that whoever they turn to may be aligned to the racists themselves, that they may be opening themselves up to further racial abuse, harassment, assault, and so on, treatment, and discrimination, and so on and so forth. So people are What we're looking at there? Mayor Lutfur Rahman, is that a tweet from him? It says, the barrage of discriminatory abuse I have received over the last few days on here, on Twitter that is, and elsewhere will be referred to police for hate crime. Yet he's been found guilty by the judge for saying that his opponents were racist against him. The allegations that were made against him were racist. And this is why it's a dangerous precedent to make that an area of guilt. I find that, just totally mind-boggling. This is a step, not a step, it's a leap backwards. They've backflipped on the issues on race relations here. When somebody's come forward with allegations of racism, that needs to stop everything, and those allegations need to be heavily investigated. Anyways, keep your texts and your calls coming in. If you've got any tweets, go tweet at our account, that's at Middle Path Radio. Similarly, contact us here into the studio on 07477 080 248. That's 07477 080 248. We're going to go for a very short break, and after the break, inshallah, we will be talking about other issues. We're not going to stop people from commenting on the current issue that we've just discussed, but keep those coming in as text message form, please. We'll be talking soon about the protests in America. And after the break, we'll also be taking the very question of whether to vote or not to vote. We see you straight after this break. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You're listening to Middle Path Radio, and this is the Security Council. I'm your brother Ahmed, and with me in the studio, as usual, we have Mr. Producer, and we have, of course, Brother Khabbab. I forgot to tell you that Brother Zain is out of action, been taken away with some bad health. We wish him a speedy recovery. That brings us actually quite timely to our next agenda. Brother Zain had actually prepared for some representatives from the Afro-Caribbean community to come speak to us. We did say on our Twitter feed that we had a special guest ready. Unfortunately, because Brother Zain couldn't make it tonight, we've had to postpone that arrangement for another day. We were going to discuss, they were going to talk with the special guests tonight in depth about what's happening in Baltimore, USA. And really what's happening out there is quite shocking for all of us. I woke up this morning to find, Twitter exploding with news and images out of Baltimore. And it's really quite a sad state of affairs, because I'm thinking to myself, here we go again. Not because of the protests, but here we go again with police officers killing black people in America. I'm not going to mince my words here. That's exactly what is happening. And it's not just happening in America. Racism by police happens in the UK. Are we forgetting Mark Duggan, who was found to have been killed quite lawfully, even though he was unarmed? This kind of thing is happening on a regular basis in the United States of America. Brother Khabbab, I understand you're following the breaking news on that. You're saying any new developments since then?
No, nothing at the moment. Just still going for the Twitter feed.
There were some things that happened that led to these protests. We know that a young man by the name of Freddie Gray, if that's correct, if I'm getting the name pronounced properly, Freddie Gray, he was accosted by some police officers in America. Again, he was unarmed, and he was seen some mobile phone video footage. Are we okay there, Mr. Producer? Some mobile phone video footage was released of him being wrestled to the ground, or him being put into cuffs, hands and feet, if I understand. And he was seen with a very limp leg. At one point, I looked at the video and I saw that his leg was bent in the wrong direction, the way a leg can't really bend unless it had been forced to break. I was really, really, let's say, appalled by that footage. And there were bystanders screaming to the police officer saying, you're hurting him. He's in a lot of serious pain. He seems to have broken his leg. He's got a broken leg. What have you guys done to him? There were women screaming at the top of their voices to stop these police officers. And I have to say, they are brave women, because many bystanders in previous incidences have then been criminalized for standing up for members of the public, like this young black man. Okay? Later on, he was bundled into the back of a police vehicle, and he wasn't belted up properly. This is apparently quite a common technique by the United States Police Service. Okay, they like to describe themselves as a police force because they're all armed to the teeth, probably to kill young, unarmed black teens and black men and women in general. So he was, and there have been descriptions of how police vehicles are driven very erratically on purpose to cause injury to the suspect. I put it in inverted commas. Suspected of what exactly is unknown. And this is what happens. Apparently he broke his neck during this whole process. Freddie Gray then died of his injuries. And this is not new, because we spoke about this not so long ago when the whole protests in Ferguson erupted. We had people dying in America recently and not just recently, for a very, very long time. But my memory doesn't serve me so well. And I remember names like Mike Brown, Trayvon Martin. We remember names like Oscar Grant. So many black men, and many women actually, who were unarmed, were shot to death or killed by other means of brutality by the police. And I think that's completely unacceptable. That's the only way I can describe it. It's unacceptable that in the 21st century that black people of color, are being treated in this way. And that they have a black president who's supposed to have their back, is what I'm trying to say. And he's not said anything about this, and it's not about saying, and even if he has been saying, some people say, well, he made a statement here about they're talking about black deaths in police custody. It's not about what he's saying that matters. It's about what he's seen to be doing about these issues and what's actually been done to solve these problems. Okay, do you want to play that? We're just looking at another video clip where Freddie Gray it has, Baltimore police death, the live video, that 80% of his spine was severed. 80% of his spine was severed. I mean, what kind of arrest, what kind of making an arrest causes 80% of somebody's spine to be severed, ripped up or broken? Like, I can't understand this. I've seen the footage, again, of mobile phone footage of Oscar Grant. He was sat down, back against the wall, on his butt cheeks, with three of his mates, hands cuffed behind his back, completely harmless, on the floor, surrounded by police officers. And the next minute, he's being manhandled, put on the floor, I believe on his back or on his belly at that time, and a few shots are being fired into his body. He's been shot and he's dead. That was in complete public view. I think it was before New Year's Day. There was a lot of people in that tube station. We're going to go quickly to this short video clip and see what they have to say, if they can add some more to this story coming out of Baltimore.
Mystery death of a young man in Baltimore police custody. The autopsy on this 25-year-old is now complete. The names of the officers involved in his arrest released. But more information has not led, though, to any more clarity as far as how this 25-year-old suspect, Freddie Gray, broke his neck after Baltimore police arrested him. This is back on April 12th. He died a week later. Now, as we mentioned a second ago, the department has suspended these 6 officers with pay. They've released their names, their ages, how long they've been on the force, but officials didn't specify on the reasons why. However, the mayor of Baltimore did tell CNN this.
We know that he asked for medical attention. We know that that medical attention was not immediately requested for him. We know that was a mistake.
That conclusion based on the fact that Gray asked for medical help more than once while being transported in a van. In fact, city and police officials revealed Gray requested his asthma inhaler, at the same time officers called for the van. They also disclosed that Gray was put in leg restraints, but officials say they do not know how or when Gray's spinal cord was severed. And what's more, Gray's autopsy revealed his spinal injury was the only trauma to his body.
There was no physical bodily injury that we saw, nor was it evident in the autopsy of Mr. Gray. None of his limbs were broken.
CNN has affiliate WJZ has obtained amateur video that provides a new, closer angle to Gray's arrest. Warning, the video is tough to watch.
Shorty, that was after they tased out of him like that. Man, I've been recording. I've been recording it. I've been recording it. What car they come out of, yo?
He on a bike, yo, right there. Him right there. He on a bike.
I got it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, yo.
Get his badge, number, his chump badge.
After they did tase yo like that, you wonder why he can't use his legs.
So that was a quick clip. I'm afraid obviously the nature of radio means you couldn't see what we were seeing, but you could at least hear what was being said. And there you go. His spine was definitely severed, and some passers-by were also remarking that he couldn't use his legs. They said it could have been possibly due to the fact that he was tasered so heavily. His leg looked very limp. Only one of his leg, he was dragging it along behind his body as the police were dragging his body ahead of him. I think, what can we say? Does this surprise anyone? I think what surprises me is that more people are not awake to this reality on an international scale. More people are not awake in America of these realities that communities in America have to face. More people are still, a lot of people are still in denial that these kinds of things are happening to black people. How come we hear about so many black deaths in police custody? Why don't we hear about white deaths in police custody? And to be fair, you know, in all honesty, white people sometimes get mistreated just like this by the police. Okay? Is it such a big deal? It's definitely disproportionate that it's happening to the black community more than it is in the white community. That is a fact. Okay? But the police, I'm afraid, whether it be here in the UK or abroad, they've developed a reputation for abusing people in their custody, people who are supposed to be in their care, people, you know, who shouldn't be treated in this way. So I'm just shocked to see that this kind of thing is still happening. I'm surprised that there are police officers still stupid enough to do things like this, especially just coming out of Ferguson and the protests that engulfed Ferguson back then, not long ago at all. So really shocking to see that this is happening. And this is a story that's still developing as we speak. We'll be giving you more information on that as and when it unfolds. Okay, so brothers and sisters, the number is 07477 080 248. That's 07477 080 248. I just wanted to say that we didn't plan to actually talk about this particular issue today, but it was a breaking story. It has captured the attention of the international community, and I'm glad it has, because these types of issues, these issues of racism, these issues of police brutality, these issues of people abusing their position and power against those that are vulnerable, those whom are unarmed, who are going about their ordinary lives. These things need to be highlighted. People need to become more aware about them, and people need to be doing things about this. Instead, we've seen the coverage about this whole incident focus on one thing, which is the so-called riots and the quote-unquote criminals that are rampaging all of Baltimore and causing, destruction to public property and so on and so forth. And even the mayor, whom we've heard from, I've heard her talking earlier. It's a shame. She's just another Barack Obama. She was describing those individuals as criminals and, not even sympathizing with the people as to the causes that created this mess in the first place. Her statement had nothing to say about the pattern of deaths of black people in police custody in the United States of America. I was ashamed to see a black person, a black woman, being the mayor of these people, not representing them, in fact pointing their finger at those people in the first place. Sure, call for calm, call for peace, but start the blame game already while blaming only one aspect of the community, not being fair in your designation of blame. What on earth is going on here? And you're supposed to be a black woman representing the black community and all of those citizens in your area where you are a mayor. I'm just appalled to see that. And to be honest with you, the question was to vote or not to vote. I'd love to get into that, get my teeth into that. But before we go, we need to finish with one quote from a famous African American, our brother Malcolm X, Shabazz Malik. He said, open quote, "With racism plaguing America like an incurable cancer, the so-called Christian white American heart should be more receptive to a proven solution to such a destructive problem. Perhaps it could be in time to save America from imminent disaster, the same destruction brought upon Germany by racism that eventually destroyed the Germans themselves." End quote from Brother Malcolm X, a great thinker and activist for not only the Muslim community, but also for the African Americans and Americans in general. So really, I can't understand, where we are at today, and I wanted to just talk about the subjects of voting, to vote or not to vote. And it seems we are also running out of time tonight. We have run out of time, and I want to only apologize to our listeners because we've delayed this now 2 weeks. Next week, bi'idhnillah, we will definitely start this off as our first agenda. For those of you who are still waiting in anticipation to discuss this or to find out the views, the actual personal views of presenters on Middle Path Radio, you need to stay tuned until next week to hear. But what I will give away tonight is that the panel and all the presenters on Middle Path Radio, they have their own views and they actually have differing views, but they do represent the spectrum of views that exist in the community. So if you're going to think that your view is not going to be heard on Middle Path Radio, think again. Tune in next week, Tuesday, okay? Every Tuesday at 10 p.m. on Middle Path Radio to catch up on the latest and breaking in the world and also in the Muslim community. Without any further delay, I say our final Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
In a world overrun by neocon warmongers, and with the mass media in the pockets of the cabal elite, there remains one bastion of truth amidst the confusion. One beacon of light shining through the murky fog of spin and Islamophobic propaganda. That's right, it's the NP Radio Security Council, the final frontier in the fight for freedom and fairness. I give you the Security Council.
أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد عن خطى الإيمان دربنا درب قويم دربنا درب قويم بالهدى القرآني
أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد أبدا لن نحيد عن خطى الإيمان دربنا درب قويم دربنا درب قويم بالهدى القرآني سائر في طريق الحق يا جند الله جند الله جند الله جند الله جند الله جند الله جند الله